Hi, it's a pleasure to be here for Table of File, an event that's amazing because we are just meeting a lot of very important people. And for this table, I guess so far, from what we have heard, digital preservation is not an easy task. To ensure that digital content remains accessible and usable over time, we need a good plan, we need money, we need preservation methods, technologies, good strategies and actions to ensure easy and global access to our content, regardless media failure and technological changes. So FILEALIVE fourth online meeting, Arquivo as an institution, invites the most unbelievable guests, the directors and founders of the digital archives, IZEA and SIGGRAPH, a reference to everybody, the Leonardo Pioneer Award winner and co-founder of IZEA, Wim van der Plas, computer scientists, professor, researcher, Janice Searleman, artist and professor Bonnie Mitchell, with Paula Perissinotto, co-founder and co-organizer of FILE, to give us tips and share their stories, experiences, and desires. So how do we keep? That's what we want to discover now from Wim, please. Wim, if you could start, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us and for organizing this. I want to talk about the International Symposium on Electronic Art, also known as IZEA, a little bit about the history and focusing on the two archives that we have. I want to start sharing my screen so we can look not at me, but at the matter that is at hand. And I want to start with 3 pictures that will give you a little bit of an idea of how IZEA started. There was this little foundation in Holland called Foundation for Creative Computer Applications that organized events in the 80s to, like this event, Project Computer Art, that was meant to educate the professionals in the creative industries and artists that had missed the computer while they were in school. And from that, this was an event in 1984. From that grew the idea to start an international conference on electronic art and bring together the worlds of computer graphics and computers music on an international level. Later, this was changed into symposium because it sounded nicer, and 1986 was a bit too optimistic. So it was 1988 before we made a start. This is not what we want to look at, but this. So we had the first International Symposium on Electronic Art in 1988 in the Netherlands. And there were quite a few people. There was much interest. It was really an encounter of the worlds of computer music and computer graphics. These people discovered they were working on the same problems and they didn't know that. So it was a good step forward. At the symposium, at the first symposium, it was decided it should get a continuation. And so 2 years later, the second symposium was organized. And when that sorry, I'm doing something wrong. The second symposium was organized, second, the S is for second. Then at that symposium, there were people from Australia that were already at the first symposium also, who really wanted the symposium in Australia. So again, 2 years later, it happened in Sydney, and then 1 year later in Minneapolis, and then in Helsinki, and the ball went rolling. And so by now, we have become big and important, and we had 26 symposia so far. And we have really gone around the globe, like the last few symposia were in Colombia, South Africa, Korea, and a virtual one from Montreal last autumn. This start was sort of an anarchistic start. There was no organization behind it. In the beginning, I just tried to coordinate the continued occurrence of the symposium. In 1990, we founded an organization, a membership organization, that later in 2006 was changed into a foundation, IZIA International. They coordinate the continued occurrence of the symposia, but they have no money. So there is not a strong central organization. So while things were developing, we discovered nobody kept a systematic record of what happened at the symposia. So around that same time, we decided to try to reconstruct history, and we started building an archive. Then that first version of the archive is what you're actually looking at right now. So I want to show you a little bit about this archive. There are two main menus. This is the main menu. There's an about page that has news, a glossary about the terms that are used in the archive. News, the production team is the volunteers that we have working all over the world that are helping us out. And news about that summit that happened at IZIA 2020, which had as a main goal to start cooperation between new media archives, of which this event now is a second step. So that's all very nice. Then we also have a page at the end of the symposium, so to speak, at the end of the archive, so to speak, that has other archives in it, like the file archive is here, and more information about new media archives. But the bulk of the information on the symposia is here. This is the symposia that we already saw in another mode, this mode. And these are the publications that came out of the symposia. IZIA is primarily an academic conference surrounded by artistic events, and for some the artistic events around the academic symposium are more important than the academic symposium, but it's leveled somehow. So the symposia always produce academic proceedings with all the papers and panels and that kind of sessions reported in there, the full papers, and usually there is a catalog with information on the artworks, the concerts, and the other artistic events, and usually has lots of pictures in it. So you can find the full PDFs, the full publications of all these symposia on this little page. I will not open it because they're usually quite huge and it will take some time to open it. Back to the bulk of the information, the symposia. Let's open the last one that was held, and then you'll see that there is a second menu now, this one, and there is one page that is the first page to open that gives you some general information about this symposium. In this case, the number of the numbers of the symposium, which was, as I said, held online only. The committees that organize the symposium, the International Program Committee that peer reviews the papers. Oops, that's a long list. And the art jury that juries the art proposals for the symposium. And the themes are also have become more and more important than the sponsors and the funders, partners, and that kind of information. But the content of the symposium itself is in those 3 pages. This is the academic part. This is the educational part, workshops that are given to either teach about a new technique or a new discipline, or sometimes to have people catch up in knowledge so that they can follow the academic part of the symposium. And the last category here is the art events. I opened this, the others look the same. There's always a name and a title. And when you open the title, you see you'll see a statement, the artist statement. And in this case, with tags or keywords, short artist statement, many videos that demonstrate this particular artwork, an image of the artwork, and a bio with the artist's website connected to it. So this is all quite straightforward, this information, not very spectacular to look at. I mean, many pages don't have pictures on them, and they don't always have videos attached to them. So I've chosen a nice page for you to show to you. But this is in essence, the classic archive. I forgot to set my timer, so if I go on for too long, just cut me off. Because this is not a very spectacular archive, that doesn't really reflect the exciting symposia and all the incredible things that you can see and hear there. And besides that, it's also the information is getting too much for this simple WordPress site. So it was Bonnie's idea a couple of years ago to start building a better website that would be much more attractive to look at, but also would be much more functional. So she started, sorry, I opened the wrong page. She started to build and is building together with Jan and a number of other volunteers, they're all volunteers, started to build this new version of the archives. And as you can see, it's much more visual, it is dynamic, and it's nice. You recognize that we have mainly the same categories, the symposia, the publications, the academic part, the learning part, and the art part. But there are a few new features here, like visualization possibility of data, where you can, for example, see where all the symposium participants came from on a map, and the special category of the contributors, which we don't have in the old, in the classic archive, I should say. It's in progress. The classic archive is more up to date than the new one, but it's getting there. If you look at one of the pages, sometimes it takes a while to load, so I opened it before and I chose the art events page of 2015 symposium that was held in Vancouver. And I chose this page because it looks nice. You see, it's much more attractive than the page I showed you in the classic archive. I can click on a picture. The pictures are representing the artworks. And if I take this one, it will take me to Christa Sommerer and Laura Mignonneau, a couple that is very well known in the electronic artwork world. And on this page, so we have a people's page that we did not have in the classic archive. We had this bio underneath their statement, but now we have it all on one page. So you'll also see that I can click on the name here, because this was the what we looked at was the artist statement for this particular 2015 artwork, but here we have Krista's page, and you'll see all her bios in chronological order of all the IZIAs that she has partaken in, and she is really a frequent guest. Also has been a keynote speaker in 2019, and already in '94 she was participating with work. You see all the artworks that, even though we don't have all the pictures yet, but we will get there, and they will all link to the artist statements of this particular artwork. Here you see all the papers she presented, the panels that she was in, and the keynote she gave, and you can click on them and go to those. Now, this is all much nicer than the classic archive because there is interconnectedness. You can organize data in many ways. You can search in many different ways, and all that could not be done in the classic archive. On the other hand, there is also problems with this because, especially for IZIA, because as I explained in the beginning, IZIA started in a more or less anarchistic way, and it started at the right moment in time, and it surfed on a wave that went on, and it went from city to city all over the world, which means that every time they invent the wheel again, because of course they know how to organize a symposium much better than the ones that did it last year. And next year again, they will know that do it much better. But this is nice, except for reinventing the wheel too much. But it also creates problems because they will name things differently. They will organize elements of the symposium in another way than usual. And this creates problems for a structured archive like this, because this kind of archive needs a lot of pre-definition. And to give just one example of this is when you want to add a new person. I have logged in as an administrator, you cannot do this, but if we want to enter a new person, you have to fill out this long list of fields, and you can leave a lot of those fields empty, but still for each person you have to do this. And if I go back to the classic archive for just a second, oh, sorry, I forgot what the classic archive is, and what you'll see that they have, for example, international program committees that are incredibly long, much too long in my opinion, but that's beside the point. But if you want to enter the International Program Committee in the new archive, you would have to enter person by person, fill out all these fields. Well, in the classic archive, I could just copy and paste this from the proceedings. So that makes it quite laborsome to do this in the new archive, although Bonnie and Jan are working on ways to make this easier. I'm sure I forgot.
If you don't mind, I think would be a nice moment to give the words for them, and finished, then we come back into this. What do you think? Great.
Okay, I'm finished. Thank you.
If you want to add anything, it's
no,
good.
It's the right moment. I was going to say thank you and see you next time. It's okay.
Great, thank you so much.
This is the right moment for Jan to take over.
No, thank you, Wim.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Wim. I'd really like to thank the organizers of the FILEALIVE for inviting me. I'm really very happy to be here. And a special thanks to Fabiana. You've just been so wonderful and helpful. I'm going to talk about the ACM SIGGRAPH Art Show archives. So when I retired from teaching computer science in 2015, I joined the Digital Art Committee for ACM SIGGRAPH, and that's where I met Bonnie Mitchell. Bonnie had done some work in archiving before that, so we joined forces and to create this archives, trying a new approach that had lots of interconnections that you'll see when we finish this presentation. In 2019, I also joined with Vim and Bonnie on the IZEA Symposium New Archives. And so you're going to see a lot of similarities. These two archives have the same back ends, and Bonnie will be talking about that. The ACM is the Association for Computing Machinery. It's the professional and scientific society for people in all areas of computers. The SIGGRAPH, or Special Interest Group on Computer Graphics and Interactivity, are for those who function or concentrate on that topic. So ACM SIGGRAPH has had an annual conference, and it's getting close to 50 years of those. But in 1981, they added a digital art show to that annual conference. So in our archives, we have all of the art exhibitions, plus all of the art papers, presentations, and art-related events from all of SIGGRAPH from 1981 to the present. We also include SIGGRAPH Asia and the Digital Art Community online exhibitions. So you can explore the archives by, maybe you want to find out more about a particular year. So you could click on a year, say 2015. Again, you'll see the similarities, basic information about the conference, but also you'll see that all of the exhibition artworks are on display here, and one might catch your fancy and you can start to click on things and explore further. Or maybe the writings catch your eye and you're interested in that. Another way of exploring this archive is through the people who contributed to art shows and art papers throughout the years. So we have tagged our people so that we are able to pull out, say, so chairs or artists or authors and so on. And you can then select one of these. Say you want interested in all of the contributors. You can view them. You can see all of their contributions throughout the year. You could just look at people and you remember their last names. So you want to maybe look up the K's and find an artist such as Yuichiro Kawaguchi. This brings up his profile page. Information about him and all of the many contributions he's made to SIGGRAPH throughout the years. You can see it's considerable. You might find one of these artworks you'd like to look at closer, so you could select one of those from the list and see the artist's statement, see more information about that as well. Another way of viewing artworks is that our artwork is also tagged so that you could have artworks that maybe you're interested in virtual reality or maybe internet art, or in this case, electronic and robotic objects. So this shows all of the electronic robotic object artworks exhibited at SIGGRAPH throughout the year. You can look at it in different ways. You can sort by title, year, etc. You can also choose this gallery view, which gives you the nice icons, which you can then select. Or you can choose to see it in list view. Sometimes it's nice to be able to see sort of a table of information. The writings and talks are in the archive. Again, they are also separated into categories. And you can, for instance, you want to look at the papers. You could look at papers, you can sort them in a number of ways. It gives you the abstract and other information. Maybe you're interested in one of these papers. I'll choose the seminal paper by Patrick Prince. She wrote about SIGGRAPH art exhibitions in 1989. And in addition to the abstract, we have the ability to look at the full PDF of this paper. But we also have a link to the ACM digital library, which has another set of information about this. A new feature of the archives is collections. Everardo Reyes of Paris suggested to us that why don't you have curators? Maybe they have a theme in mind and they could look at what's in the ACM SIGGRAPH archives and maybe choose some artworks based on the theme. So one of the more recent ones is the SIGGRAPH artworks that are also in the Victoria and Albert Museum. Douglas Dodds, the senior curator at that museum, put together a description, and he was interested in very early digital art. And so he formulated his ideas, and he came up with all of the artworks that are both in SIGGRAPH, but also in the V&A Museum. You can view those in different ways, but let's suppose that you select one of them. What's interesting here is like our regular artwork page. You have the image, you have information, you have when it was exhibited in SIGGRAPH, but it also contains a link to this museum in London, the Victoria and Albert Museum. And you can follow that link to see the same artwork by the same artist from their point of view. Wim mentioned very briefly visualization. So in the interest of open source, we have added the ability to view our data about people, artworks, or writings, or to actually download it in a format CSV. You could, for instance, decide you want to find out about people who have contributed to SIGGRAPH. You can select the kinds of information that we have available about it. And this will create a CSV file where visualization artists might take that and might be able to present another way of looking at this data. So very interesting. We also have a location map. So the location map is a simple way to visualize throughout the world. This is built on map data. And we can look at various subcategories, such as where were the exhibitions held, or we can look at everybody, or in this case, we can look at, we can select artists. So you can see throughout the world where these artists are. Now, this is only the people in our archive that we actually have that location data for. Some, particularly the earlier artists, we don't have that information. One thing of interest here is I did take a little look in Brazil. You can see there's various artists here, and oh, in Rio, there's Rejane Spitz. So you can bring up her information. You could actually click on her information, and that brings you to the profile page that Rejane has in our archive, along with the artworks that she's contributed through that. So that is the end of my talk. I do want to, though, thank the ACM History Committee and the SIGGRAPH History Committee for their support of this project. I want to thank Bonnie for being a fabulous co-director. She and I are a team. Wim, you too. We form a good team working together. And I want to thank all the many students, I'll scroll through just a few of them, who have made this all possible through the years. So thank you, everyone. And I look forward to talking more about how we went about this in the future.
Thank you very much, Jen. So now we're having the other side of Jen, Bonnie, right? The team, like you said. Welcome, Bonnie.
Hello. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Sorry, I need to get to the first thing. Here we go. Let's try this again. As mentioned before, I'm Bonnie. I'm the infamous Bonnie that works with these two wonderful people. I'd like to talk a little bit about the interconnectedness of data, not only between the IZEA and the SIGGRAPH archives, but I want to expand that beyond to include other archives as well. But before I get started, I just want to thank the organizers of the FILEALIVE. This has been an incredible event. I've listened to some amazing presenters, and I look forward to the presentations tomorrow as well. So first of all, as mentioned, these two archives have similar backends. We started off with the SIGGRAPH one, then we ported that and created the IZEA one, but there are also differences. Now, if we're thinking about connecting these two archives, we have to think about what are we going to connect, because there's a lot of data in there. So what if we start with people and we look at it from kind of a people-centric view? The people are connected to different bits of information within each of those archives. Or we could look at it from an art event or an artwork centric view. And so those artworks, whether it be a performance or a concert or a monitor-based artwork, they are connected to the symposium or the art exhibition, the person that made it. Lots of different connections are happening between that, all the information within the archive, but it all connects back to that artwork. And so what we have to do is we have to start to visualize how these connections come together if we're going to connect these two archives. And one of the ways we do that is by understanding the archive itself. Now, of course, we built it, so we understand it pretty well. But essentially what we use is this thing called pods. And pods enables us to create a custom content management system. So we come up with a pod, maybe symposium, and then we think about all the fields that are related to a symposium. We add those in there. Let's take an art event pod. That art event pod is going to need some relationships to other things within that same archive. So we created these things called taxonomies. Essentially, they're just categories and lists, and they can grow. We can change them, no problem. But everything has connections, and that's how Jan was able to pull down the menu and show you that, hey, we can jump into all the robotic and electronic works, or we could jump into all the VR works really easily. We don't actually have those pages. They get made on the fly. And so we do it by connecting these two pods. We create bi-directional fields that let these two pods understand information from each other. And so this idea of categorizing the work that's in the archive is so important to creating interconnections. And so it gets complicated though, because new media artists like to create new categories, right? We find things that exist in multiple categories. We find things that don't exist in any of these categories. For instance, recently, there was a whole bunch of artworks that used the cell phone. I didn't have a category for cell phone, so I had to add a new locative media, mobile phone kind of art. So these can change, but we had to go through and make all these categories and to enable those menu choices. So the menu choices just send a query to the database and say, give me all the work that happens to have that tag, or that comes from the taxonomy that we developed. And when you do that, you end up with a page that oh, sorry, I think there was a little internet interruption. So you end up with a page that contains all of that information that you asked for. We have to we write the code for the templates to display those pages, but the code goes out there and does all the hard work for us. When we're talking about categorizing people, we categorize the people in relationship to their role in the symposium or the art event. So that might not have a lot of relevance if we're talking about other archives, but within the archive that information exists, it's very important. It enables us to choose all of the art show chairs or all the artists or just the authors. And so when we went through and started comparing these two archives, like how are we going to connect this data? We started to realize there's a little bit of information that is not in both of them. And so the items in the red boxes don't exist in both of them. They're very unique to each individual archive. And so we have to work around that. But if we look at the front end is very similar. So the visual design, the way it grabs information, the way it displays information is similar. So here's a proposal. What if we started with people? And we came up with the persons page, and at the bottom of that little page, we would say, see more by this person in, and we have an icon that links to the other archive. Or we could absorb the information from IZEA into the SIGGRAPH archive, or vice versa, absorb the information, display it right on the page, maybe color code it so it looks like it came from a different archive. Now, why stop there? Let's do this with all archives, right? New media art archives, anybody that wants to get involved. And so what if we have Char Davies, who happens to have work in many new media archives, and at the bottom of her page in the IZEA archive, we have all these little icons that will lead us to these archives that have additional information about Char Davies. We could do the same thing with artwork. So we've got this art piece, and after you've read up a little bit about the art piece, oh, I want more information about that. You click down there on the icon and it leads you to other archives that might have additional information. And these archives also have icons that lead back to other archives. And so we've already done this. Jan showed this, but it was in a very simple way. We linked to collections in museums. We've also had a recent experience where Jan and I think we're gluttons for punishment, but we started a new archive to archive the entire history of SIGGRAPH and its conferences. This is quite a massive task, but one of the first things we realized is that we're going to have to absorb all of the content from the SIGGRAPH art show archives into this new archive. So we merged the content right in there, and now we can choose the art show from one of the menu items in this new archive. So I visualize this as two possibilities. One is we have a centralized, decentralized, let me stress decentralized system. And within that, two possibilities, and I'm sure there's many more possibilities, but to keep it simple, two possibilities, we just exchange links. And the other possibility is absorbing that data into each other's archives. Or there could be a centralized system where there is a central hub. All of our data gets exported, absorbed into this central hub, and then we get information from this central hub about data that's related to content in our own archives, but it's coming from this central hub. Now, I see some issues with this in that there's ownership issues. We currently, our organizations own that data, right? And there are permissions. Oftentimes the artists have signed permission forms to allow us to use it, but maybe not other organizations. And who's going to manage this? And is there going to be financial support ongoing? And the fact that we are all going to be dependent on this central hub scares me the most, because if that goes down, then all of our archives are broken. And so there are a lot of archives out there. This took me probably 10 minutes to find this many. And Wim has a lot more on his list. And so we've got to consider the fact that they're all designed differently. They've all got different types of information in there. And they're built on different back ends as well. So how do we make this happen? Well, I came up with, a few lists here. One is, I always like to start with the positive. How are we going to make it happen? Let's gather that list. Wim started. We'll continue to add to that. We should establish a consortium. We've already started. We're talking to the file folks. We're talking to the Ars Electronica folks, ZKM, Ada, the list goes on. We're starting to talk to each other. We need to hold more meetings. We started with a roundtable in Korea at IZEA. That room was so full, we had to go steal chairs from another room, and we were packed in like sardines. People were so excited about the idea. And then we continued that on the summit, and then we continued that with File Alive. And so we have a lot of ideas about how to move forward. And so we should get together and write some grants, collaborative grants. We should learn the technical specifications of each other's archives and write some code that would enable us to connect together, and then implement that, and then establish a way of moving forward. One of the things I forgot was it's very important to have standards. So we will create some standards and agree upon those. The issues that we're going to be facing is that we might have different ideas of how this is going to manifest itself. And we have obviously different backends and different information in our archives. There's also security and permissions and regional policies on data sharing that we're going to have to overcome those obstacles, as well as technical support, funding, and communication. But I want to say, funding should not stop us from doing this. SIGGRAPH and IZEA have created amazing archives on the backs of volunteers, and they are very happy to be part of the team. And Jan and I and Wim are all volunteers as well. So it's not about money. It's about willpower. And I think as a group, we have the energy and ideas to make this happen. Thank you. And if you want to get your archive involved in this, send us an email. If you want to volunteer to be on the team, send us an email. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bonnie and Jean and Wayne. I know this presentation involves the three of you, and that's stunning. We are all motivated. So let's hear what Paula, that is a Brazilian, making an effort to join this team and to build something that will evolve all of us, right? Thank you. Paula, please.
Yes. Well, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Jen and Vin. It was great. And Bonnie, I was already so excited to see file on the context. So I'm very happy, even if it's in the image now. But what I prepared, I have a short video. It's a 13-minute video, which we will see the context where we are built and how we are organized in the sense of the database structure. So later on, we can talk about. Okay, so can we see the video, please? This is a short video that will outline the history of FILE, Electronic Language International Festival, and its current challenges. From where did it emerge? File was born in 1999 on the internet and soon has organized its first exhibition at the Museum of Image and Sound in São Paulo, Brazil in the year 2000. The name File is a reference to the tag on the top left item in the menu of almost all Windows programs and other operating systems, which in Portuguese is simply translated as Arquivo. In the beginning, we filled the file with the aesthetic productions made for the internet. File was developed along two principal axes over its 20 years. One of them is online, with websites, databases, social medias, and etc. The other is offline. Exhibitions, publications, symposium, workshops, and performances. The internet is built on a complex living dynamic which needs to be refreshed and updated frequently. One of File's core commitments is to provide the public with free access to all the information it has on the artworks and artists' information who participate in each event. To date, File has organized 49 exhibitions in 7 different cities since the year 2000. The festival was an active participant in the early days of the broadband internet arrival in Brazil. As a result, Brazil gained an internationally visible cultural platform which showed and continues to show works of art from the digital world as part of the continuum and ever-emerging interweaving of technology and art. What has changed since then? Since a few years ago, the increasing sophistication of algorithms has gradually led to the emergence of a new artificial intelligence. To be present in the online world today requires the use of complex algorithms and significant financial resources. The online relationship with the public has become dependent on this. Programmers who, in the past specialized in just one language, now have to work in various. If, during the first years of the century, the internet and the computer were new to many in Brazil, those who were born at that time now live in a society in which technologies such as the mobile internet are totally integrated. While, of course, File's public now is not the same as when the festival was born. One of the biggest achievements of the festival has been the audience it has won. More than 1 million people in Brazil have visited File's event. One of the challenges faced by the festival now is to sustain a dialogue with this new generation, while, at the same time, maintaining its position as a point of contact between the new and the historic. This is a central point in our mission, to connect art, technology, and innovation with their own history of interaction, looking forward while preserving what remains behind. What are we planning to do with this 20 years record of File? Our archive already includes all the documents and data, which tells the stories of events that have been organized over the years. There are bilingual texts, translated talks, videos of performance, images and video of artworks. The content is in various formats, totally printing, publications, databases, documentaries, DVDs, artist statements, artists' writer tags, biographies, along with hundreds of formal and informal records stored in our offices. It is a core mission and desire to make this content available to the public in an accessible environment. This is the current File Festival web archive structure, with 2 different backends and databases. One for the yearly open call and another one based on the WordPress platform. The subscriptions forms are divided by categories and have different data fields depending on the correspondent category. The raw data from the forms is treated, translated and revised so it can be inputted into the WordPress backend. This is the data and information that is shown at our front end, the File Festival website. To illustrate the current structure that is the back end for the yearly File subscription, here you can see the total amount of entries from 2012 and how the forms were built for each category. This is an example of a complete subscriptions for the File-led show category, which all the field, data and information requested in the entry form. Once the submitted work is selected, the data from this form will be manually inputted into the WordPress platform. Now you can see the WordPress backend, which is also structured by categories and subcategories. The selected work exemplified can be seen published at our front-end website. In order to face our next goal and challenges, FILE has mapped out all kinds of data and information that the festival organization must handle every year to accomplish FILE's projects and exhibitions. From financials and administrative area to research, subscriptions, data and files, communications with artists, architecture projects, visual communications, productions, publications, disclosure material, and so many others. All of this information is essential as fragments and traces to be kept in the archive as the construction of a social memory of this event. At this stage, we are currently working on the transformation of this three-structure organization into a more circular, fluid, and flexible archive, which must be applied in a possible current technology to be co-shared and linked online with other cultural art institutions. One of FILE's next goal and challenge is to make publicly available the documents and materials we have accumulated over 20 years in a single, reliable archive to be shared with others, which should be a dynamic environment as the content that it aims to sustain and preserve. We already have a name for it. It's called FILEALIVE. We would like to discuss here, together with the International Society of Electronic Art Community, possibilities of how to preserve the traces left by our 20 years of work and leave this as a legacy, while in the same way reformulating what is traditional in art, in the sense that we deepen and strengthen the relationship between art and technology.
Thank you, Paula. I think we have so many questions, so I wanna dive into it already. And but before anything, maybe Wing, I have a question that addresses you mainly, and then everybody, in the sense that when we see what you are doing, what we see, and Bonnie stated that so well, we are telling stories. We are telling stories between ourselves, and we want to do it in a very accurate way, right? And we need to save these stories. We need to keep them. So how do we do that? And I think Wing is a master in that, because he's the first to foresee it, to see a way of letting people talk their stories publicly and put that together. So Wing, I would love to start with your ideas on that, and also the ideas that now we are not only talking about your idea, congregating people and putting people together, but now you have a team of people that want to work with you. So that's why I want to hear about the future. And one question here, many questions from the public, they talk about the future. So nobody better than you can answer that question.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, but first of all, IDEA was not my idea. It was my much cleverer friend, Theo Hesper, who has been living in Indonesia for a long time. It was his idea. He is a computer scientist. He is with a strong interest in culture, and what he especially saw happening, and me as a sociologist agreed with that culture is becoming more and more electronic, you know, in a way. He saw that already in the 80s and before that. And we have witnessed that culture is largely electronic nowadays. People communicate via electronics. They express themselves electronically. Music is for a large part electronic. And still we have these elite events and think we are special. But in fact, of course, the art world missed the boat, if that's not only a Dutch expression. They sort of still went their own way while the rest of society went in the direction of using computers. The artists still stuck to their brushes and paint, which I don't want to do away with. Let me make that clear. I mean, all the traditional art forms are still unique and useful and should not disappear. I don't mean that. But nowadays, of course, there is no art school, at least in the Western world, that has not integrated a computer in their curriculum. So it's really seeing where culture goes to and catching up with that much more than having a vision that's so special. Having said that, the heritage to keep these things, it becomes easier and easier to make records of what is happening. You know, in a way, you cannot say anything anymore, or it will be on the internet for the rest of your life. So it's becoming easier, not more difficult, to store information, including images and music. What is more difficult is maybe storing actual physical installations, but that's not something that IZEA does. Some other archives do, and that's a very special problem. But back to your question, what do I see? What is needed is this cooperation, and there is here and there is some money too to support the preservation of cultural heritage, and because we at IZEA and SIGGRAPH has a little bit of money. IZEA has no money. We are all volunteers, and we're being helped now by student volunteers too. But I think the corona epidemic plays a role in that too, because everybody's sitting at home being bored. When that stops, I don't know if we have so many volunteers anymore. What I try to say is that there is a very strong need for support for these kinds of archives that we are talking about. It's not just us trying to work together, but it's also trying to get politics interested in culture. And that's something that seems to have disappeared from agendas all around the world. Here in Holland, we had our Minister of Economics was sure that art is only a hobby, right? It's a hobby. It doesn't understand that on the one hand you have science, on the other hand you have art, and together they're the top of our culture. No, art is a hobby. They say that on the highest levels, and that worries me very, very much. I think I said enough.
In that case, I need to put Paula in the scene, because nothing is worse than Brazil today. I'm sorry to say that here, but I have to. And the effort of Paio doing that is tremendous. So I'd like Paula to explain, so we all can understand how she's trying to develop this platform. And I think that would be a nice link, because in Brazil we learned something. We gotta do it no matter what. Like Bonnie said and Jen said, we will do it. And Paula is doing that. So I invite Paula to talk a little bit about the platform now. Thank you.
Well, actually, what we are trying to do, as I mentioned in the video, is to before getting connected, well, the problem is already set for Bonnie and Jen, who likes problems. But what we are planning here is, together with Reinaldo, who is here with us in the backstage, it's one of the possible paths to take with this archive that we have today. Would be, and the technology to reorganize the archive would be to use of the headless technology content manager, to build the database structure. This was the suggestion of Reinaldo, where the data from all kinds of web application will be maintained inside of the database and managed through an administrative interface, such as Strap API. So Strap APIs is the suggestion of Reinaldo for us to change the structure of the archive and maybe get connected and made the relations between the informations inside of the archive. I mean, I know this sounds very abstract. I have a short video that might explain better. It takes 4 minutes, so maybe I can share with you quickly. So we have, can you see it?
No, I see a
Yes,
Word
it's
document.
starting.
You're seeing your desktop.
Yeah.
No?
We see your desktop, but not the video, Paula.
Yes, not the video.
Whether it's a website, a mobile app, or other devices that access the internet. The database structure has to be defined inside the content manager.
The volume is lower.
Maybe I could address a question to Bonnie while you fixing that. What do you think?
Yes.
Just to keep going.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Wait,
So
I
Bonnie.
think she just needs to share her audio
Sorry.
when she shares her screen.
Okay. The audio was not on. That's it.
Yeah, but it's still.
When you share your screen, you can.
No, it's
Yeah,
not
the audio.
lower. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I will close and start again. Okay. It's better.
Yeah, and
Okay.
this time when you share your screen,
right.
just click to share the audio as well.
But then, oh, I don't know what's happening. Now I cannot find the sharing screen. So please go on and I try to find myself here.
Allows the data access.
Okay, Bonnie. So, and then I know part of the work you do is voluntary work. Like you said that the summit, and the summit also, even though it was virtual, was super busy. Everybody went to talk. I remember we shared different rooms, right? And I think the idea is like everybody wants to get into it. So how do you do it? Can you give us some tips? Could we help? Even though we are not really involved, can we help you?
I think I could offer a few tips. I was looking through the questions and somebody had asked for advice for people that might be starting an archive. And so I guess I would break it into 2 parts. One is dealing with the past and one is dealing with the future. So when you are developing an archive to start off with, you really have to do a lot of catch up. You've got all of this information. It's very important to understand all aspects of the information that you want to put into that archive and start to generate some of these lists that you're seeing, these categories that they might fit into, and then creating cross connection. So seeing where that might be connected to this other one. So just to understand and to diagram the information architecture. I would say our first year was really kind of working through that problem. And it never really is done, because you will realize that, oh, we need to add this. Oh, that's not really working. But the second part of it is thinking about the future. I see this beautiful video that Paula has showed us. And one of the problems with IZEA and SIGGRAPH is there have been really amazing performances and artworks and presentations that nobody really documented properly. And so as we're working forward, we're trying to think of a system that would enable the works to get documented in a proper way and automatically get ingested into the archive, because it is so much work to take a single chapter or year, whether it be the SIGGRAPH Art Show or whether it be the IZEA Symposium, to take the stuff that gets produced, like the proceedings, and scan them, and asking the hosts for photographs, which they never took. And it's just so much work to get the information that our goal right now is to really think of what is the best way of getting the information in advance and getting the best documentation of the work. So, it really is two parts, and 99% of me thinks about the past right now. But we do have these meetings with the IZEA board and with the committee heads at SIGGRAPH to talk about how we can solve this future problem. And so I would suggest, if you're working on something brand new, to think through the future as well.
One thing, Bonnie, artists, oh, sorry.
No, I was just,
Bonnie?
Yes?
Artists, they do produce a lot of documents also. And I think ADA is thinking about the way ADA operates. It's really nice because the artists themselves can feed the system.
Yes.
And that helps you a lot already, right? One thing that you don't have is like the artist feeding the system. And that, I think that would be like 50% of the job, especially because we are careful. There are many things, like I was telling you, I feel there are many things that are still in the hands of the artists. And we could like improve in that sense to feed in the system. But I think Paula has now, she is trying, because she collected a lot of things, because Paula has been receiving many things from artists. So now she's trying to organize, and the video is that. The video is a lot of video documentations made on not only from file, but I recognize many of the information that is coming from a lot of people contributing, right, Paula?
Yeah, what we are trying to do is like to think a new system. We have the content. We have when we open call, it's the moment where the artist feeds the system. So we have this moment where the artists feed the system with all the contents that we ask them for it. Now, when I saw Jen's presentation, suggesting the link of other exhibitions. This is very interesting because this is a way that you would be connected on the internet with all this information from different exhibitions where the same work was on, and this it would be already a network of information. But this is something that we don't have, you know, unless as a isolated field. You know, I think I mean, I'm not a programmer, so it's very difficult for me. And that's why I wanted to show the video of this headless technology, because it's a proposal which we could maybe exchange here with you as a programmer as well. You know, if this would be a good direction for us to be connected later on. Because if I choose a technology now that will put us afar, you know, then would be another work to get connected. So as we are in the moment to start a new system, this is the moment to decide, you know, how to go. As you could see in the video, we are based on a WordPress platform, right? And
yeah,
I have a couple of comments about that. So what I was talking about, thinking about the future, is exactly what you're doing, which is perfect. Because, and we tried to deal with this with IZEA very early on, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, in that we designed a system that the artists, when they were first contributing, submitting the work for consideration, okay, they are providing all this documentation. Now, after it's, or during its exhibition at IZEA, you know, that's another story. We really do have to have it documented on site. And we could charge the artists with doing that. But, you know, in some cases, we have to do a bit of that ourselves. But the real problem is when you go back 20 years, 30 years, memory is volatile. And I could tell, Jan, is that Jan laughing? Because we had an incident.
Yes, this artist said, no, my background was blue, but in the, you know, in the manual, it's yellow. No, it was blue.
We had an artist that changed the titles of her work. It was already published in catalogs and everything. She changed the titles. She changed the artwork that was in that show. She, you know, because she really was convinced that, no, I didn't have that work in the show. I had this other work in the show. And when we really looked through all the documentation, she was wrong. And so memory's volatile when you go back in time, and people don't save those files. You know, it's like, do you have any of the files that you created in the 80s? I might on a floppy disk, you know? And so
we have some hard copies, like, you know, before when we started, people would fill a hard copy and send it by mail. So we have, together with the file in the flop disk of the work, you know, but at least it's signed by the artist. So I'm not lying, you know, it's there.
Right. And
I think the artists, they could be part of this system. They should be. That's why I'm telling you, I think the artists, they should be aware of what's going on, and not everybody. So we should teach people and tell people how to organize. I am super organized, but it's rare. And that's why I insist that if you tell us what kind of information we should give you, we should feed you, and that, I think a platform like Paula is doing, you doing, Ada is doing, could help us to provide more, to feed more the system.
And actually, that's our phase 3 with IZEA. So phase 1 is just get the information that we have easily. Phase 2 is proof the information and get the information, try and get the information that isn't so easy to get. Stage 3 is contact the artists and have them proof their pages. And I will have to tell you, we've done a little bit of that phase 3, and each time it's been a challenge. And if I amplify that by 10,000, I'm not sure we have enough volunteers to handle that. I mean, literally, one artist might take us 20 hours of work to deal with some changes that they want and stuff. But we have to do that. You're absolutely right. But we're not quite ready in IZEA because we still haven't even got all the information that we've got entered. Okay, but SIGGRAPH, we're getting very close. We've got almost everything. So now is the time to contact the artists.
And Bonnie, also you were
Quickly
talking
automate
about
that.
only the documentation of the artist, right? Not in the artwork itself. It's not like, because I saw some questions on the chat that people were asking if we were going to commit to ourselves to show the artwork again as it was. No, you know, the archive, it will just documenting a moment that the artwork was part of the festival. The conservation, the preservation of this this artwork, then it was another matter which we have discussed in the other talk. So everything, it's different problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very important to take on one little task and do it well, and then build onto that. You do have to have an understanding of the whole system, but it's very, like when we very first started this archive, one of our colleagues said, oh, you need to contact all the artists. And we knew that was beyond our scope. We couldn't contact 10,000 artists. It was just too much. So we had to build the infrastructure and get the information that we already had in there first, and then contact the artists. So you take on something you can do and do it well, and then add on to it.
So the biggest problems for us now is the system itself, right? The system itself, it's the main problem. So I don't know, which technology would you suggest, you know, because we are thinking of, as I was going to show, but I can send you the video afterwards of this headless technology, so you can have an idea. Also, I would like to say that we have an option for a Brazilian open software that they created to the WordPress platform, which is called Tainacan. It's like the pod used to the WordPress, but it's a Brazilian open software that it's very interesting. I'm not really the right person to talk about. Tomorrow we're gonna have somebody talking, Dalton Rodrigues from the Brasilia University. He's part of the project. He will talk, but it will be in Portuguese. So we can send you some information, or Reinaldo could talk a little bit if he wants to, so you can have an idea of what that means, you know. Could you say something, Reinaldo?
Yes. Hi. Hello, everyone. Yeah. Well, I'm curious to see the video about the headless technology because I produced a part of that video, and I think it can be helpful for all in this night to understand better the concept of headless technology, that we can put all the information in a single database and share that information with other companies, with other societies through API technology. I don't know if it's possible to see the video now.
Yeah, I think, Reinaldo, if it's ready, we can see it, but we need to know that the video is 4 minutes, right?
Okay,
We
yes.
will be closing
I can
in
share
about
it.
6 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
Can you
Is
share?
everybody okay? And then,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah,
great.
I'm sharing it if it goes online. Can I?
Yes, please.
Allows the data access through the API from any other kind of application, whether it's a website, a mobile app, or other devices that access the internet. The database structure has to be defined inside the content manager. In this case, the Strap API in a similar way as an Excel spreadsheet with many columns and data types. As an example, adding a table works and its different fields related to an artwork information. We may create a text field for the work title and work description, or media field or image or video. Once the table structure is created, the content and data can be inputted into the database. And the information related to the artworks are now listed. In order to share the information and make them public to any web access, it's possible to set up permissions rules, defining how the data will be shared and whether all the data should be public or just specific fields should be public. It's added another table into the database. And again, we create the specific field related to file editions, events, informations, for example. Different relationships among tables and data can be established. One-way relations, two-way relations, or even multiple ways relations. These are the relational fields. And in this case, the relations is created for both tables. When the data is inputted into the table events, registering a new event, it's possible to associate it with the works table and relate it with the artworks already added. Once the database structure is built, the inputted data on the API can be available and may be publicly accessed by direct link address of our application. This is the API outcome format. It might seem a little confused, but it is the market trend format nowadays, as it's the most used one from the modern web apps. Created with JavaScript, such as React, GetStyle, and Next. This application, Strappy, allows the data visualizations with a GET request and shows the very same data format just presented.
Very interesting.
Good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Paula, your microphone is mute.
Oh, I just want to say that any question you're gonna answer.
Easy questions, please.
Well, with only 2 minutes, I would like to just invite you, any of you, to have a continued conversation about technologies.
Yeah.
Because I find that system very interesting. It seems very similar to what we're doing, except ours is maybe more sophisticated. I mean, the complexity of it might be a little more, you know, but I'm sure there's some complexity we didn't see with this system. But
absolutely,
I think in the end, what we have to think about is the reality. You guys are in the process of trying to create a new archive, but you already have an old archive. So you have to get your information from the old one into the new one. Well, that's the situation with everybody out there. Not the people that are thinking of setting up new archives, but the people that already have very well established archives. They're not going to re-enter the information. It took us 6 years to get that information in there. We're not going to redo it again. So yeah. What we need is something that can plug into each of our archives, understand how that data is formatted, and then do some sort of conversion. But then we do get into that problem of who owns that data. We can't just send it off to, you know, some other country. So it's complex, but I think it's something we need to talk about. And it's going to get geeky. Sorry, Paula.
Bonnie.
Yeah.
No,
Bonnie,
okay, we have some more
time. Bonnie, I think one thing about who owns the data, if you have the artist feeding the system, you are already okay, because we are giving you the data, right? That would make it simple, I think.
Many, there are a number of our artists that have passed away. They're deceased. And so sometimes there's estates that will take care of the data and permissions, and sometimes not. So it's not really that simple. And contacting people, 10,000 people, we don't have their emails. It's complicated. So you can't just export everything. You know, how do you deal with that permissions problem? Because oftentimes they will sign a permission form for it to be displayed at file, not to get sent to ADA or to ZKM or to SIGGRAPH. You know, it's very specific what they signed. And so, you know, I think linking to each other is a very good start. Remember I said start small, because then you don't get into that mess, right? Like, but how do we find out? Automatically. We don't want to manually do this, but how do we know if Shar Davies is in your archive and in ADA and ZKM? You know, whenever I click on a page, it should quickly do a search for me. Where else is that stuff? Oh, put some new icons in there, you know? I like building systems that do the work for me.
Exactly. So maybe that's why we really need to sit together, because we need to think what to put in this system to be linked with each other. This would be at least one of the space on the form that all the institutions decide to have, maybe would be enough to already be linked. I don't know, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jan's really good at thinking through systems like that too. So that's
really,
why
Jan.
he's my partner. And Wim's our content expert. I mean, he's the guy that will notice that word misspelled, that, you know, extra space.
It's not good. Could be better. Good at that.
Yeah, so we make a good team, and it really does take a team to do it.
I have a good suggestion. I think we should already set another meeting pretty soon. Like, I don't know how long ago was October, right? IZEA next October. So maybe in 6 months, why not to get together, if not in the backstage before, but publicly again soon, to further discuss and come up with new solutions. If everybody's okay, I'll give 1 minute to each to talk, and then we should finish this table, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think we certainly should continue the conversation and then later do something online in public again. But we will discuss this and come up with a proposal to meet and an agenda, and we'll continue the conversation without an audience watching, so we can say what we like. All these. No. And maybe invite people from other archives too for those meetings. Let's make a little plan.
Good. And get into, have more of the technical details, have some of the technical people there, the programmers, how to make this possible.
Yeah,
bigger tables, right? Because we invited a lot of people, but we are separating in sections. So this is like, it's missing Oliver here, it's missing Manuela Novo here. Well, we know that. It would be great to have like another summit, maybe. A good tip, like I love being with you guys, so I'll be.
Right, we need idea people, content people, and programmers, technical people.
Yep.
Yes, well, Rejane, you know that I wanted to do something with everybody in the same table, but it was not possible. But I think we can now, we know that we can meet online anytime independent of a public event. So, Reinaldo, if you want to say something, would be.
Well, I think the big problem of the sharing information at nowadays is the intellectual property of the data, as Bonnie was talking before. Today in Europe, we have a big problem for the privacy information, so to create a new system today, we have to be sure that our information will be kept updated, and you have to give the permission of the own of the information. That can be a big problem for creating new system where you are storing data from a lot of people around the world. I don't know if I can explain the concept of maintaining the data from a specific person from different continents or different cities,
Yeah.
It can be a big problem when you are constructing a new platform. You need to have the consent of all artists to keep your data in your database, and especially if you are sharing that information. That can be an argument for another discussion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, and we can invite artists too, so.
Oh, sure.
Okay, great. Jen, do you have anything else to add to this amazing conversation that leads us into the future already?
I do think that planning a meeting and having goals for what we want to accomplish at that meeting sounds really good. And having that group of technical people and programmers and artists and good idea people. That's, I think, will be a good start.
Paula, do you want to add anything, or can I close the table?
You can close. I just want to thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. I mean, in behalf of File team, we are very grateful to have this opportunity and conversation. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much for organizing.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your dreams to be a dream that helps humanity to tell stories. I really appreciate that. And dreaming stories, right? Because artists are always dreaming. So you are the ones that are making the dreams possible. More than this, survive. So thank you so much. It has been a pleasure. I am very grateful to have all you here and to have a plan for the future. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.